In the last video, I bought myself a Balinese rod for fishing on the Belaya River and also here at Elk Lake, along with the matching size 3000 reel. And now that we have this 3000 reel, we can finally afford another setup that will allow us to get into spinning really effectively. So after using the Balinese setup from the last video, I continued fishing very effectively on the Belaya River, and I've now reached over 33% in my float fishing skill. Even so, it's still absolutely worth fishing here at places like Elk Lake using nothing but 3 pole rods, just like I showed in the very first video. And the great thing is that we can catch a huge variety of fish here very quickly. Those fish can then be turned in regularly for café orders at Elk Lake. I've already completed the first café orders, and now there are even more available, such as white crappie and also gizzard shad. We still need to hand those in as well. I'll simply select all 6 that I currently have, and just like that, we've earned almost another 12 silver. White crappie, however, can also be caught really well with spinning gear. And that's exactly why we're going to build ourselves another setup so we can make solid progress with spinning as well. To match the equipment we bought in the last video and everything we already have in our inventory, we're now going to purchase a spinning rod, the Linnea S68ML. This is a medium light rod with absolutely fantastic casting performance. It has a casting weight of 3 to 15, allowing us to cast very small lures extremely far while still handling medium-sized lures without any problems. On top of that, it has a line strength of 11 kilograms. And there's another very important specification here. The stiffness rating is 6 out of 10. That's extremely important later on because it allows us to fish other lure types as well, such as hard baits or topwater lures. And one of the biggest advantages of this rod is its price. It costs only 445 silver. Combined with everything we bought previously, our setup now looks like this. We've mounted the Adria 3000 reel on the rod, which is also the largest reel size this rod supports. Another huge advantage is that the entire fluorocarbon line, just like on our Balinese rod, fits perfectly onto this spinning setup as well. With this combination, we're now fully equipped to fish very successfully with spinning gear. I also continued fishing with this setup yesterday and made enough progress to unlock jigging. Jigging is an incredibly important milestone for fishing here at Elk Lake, and that's exactly what we're going to focus on today. For the classic jig setup, I still need some additional hooks and soft plastics. On top of that, skirted jigs have recently been added to the game, and we're going to start using those as well. So let's head over to the shop once again. The first thing we need for a skirted jig is, of course, the lure itself. We open the shop, go to Artificial Lures, select Skirted Jigs, and scroll down to the Finesse Micro Jig. We want the red Finesse Micro Jig, but unfortunately it's currently sold out here at Elk Lake. So I'll quickly travel to another waterway, and over at Mosquito Lake, we can buy it there instead. It's available in 2 versions, one weighing 7 grams and the other 4 grams. We'll choose the 7-gram version, the slightly larger one, and buy it for 38 silver. It's not exactly cheap, but it's definitely worth it. Since we're already here at the shop, we can continue buying everything else we need. Next, we'll need a suitable jig head and a soft plastic lure to build a classic jig rig. Before buying a jig head, however, you should always take a close look at your setup. We're using a medium light rod with a maximum casting weight of 15 grams. That means our jig head can't be too heavy because we always have to calculate the combined weight of the jig head and the soft plastic. So let's open the jig head section. Here we have a huge selection of different jig heads with varying qualities and different weights. But besides those values, there's another specification we need to pay attention to. Which hook sizes are the soft plastics designed for? If we look at the 3.5-inch craw, we can see that it's designed for hook sizes 2 through 4/0. That means we need to use at least a size 2 hook But it also can't be too heavy because the soft plastic itself already weighs 7 grams. So ideally, we want a size 2 hook weighing around 7 grams. With 7 grams for the soft plastic and 7 grams for the jig head, we'll end up at 14 grams, safely below the rod's maximum casting weight of 15 grams. Now let's compare all the available jig heads. The very first one already has almost perfect specifications. It weighs 7 grams and even comes with a size 1 hook, which is slightly larger. Unfortunately, the downside is its extremely poor quality. It only has 1 star, so I'd rather look for something better. And then we come across the protected head, which looks much more promising. It even has a weed guard to reduce snagging. Let's take a closer look. It weighs 7.5 grams, comes with a size 2 hook, and that's exactly what we're looking for. It's available in both 10 grams and 7.5 grams, so we'll choose the lighter version. It also has 4 out of 5 stars, making it a really high quality jig head. I've already bought that one. Next, I'll also buy the matching soft plastic, the 3.5-inch craw. It's available in several different colors, but one version that regularly appears in the record tables and consistently performs well is simply the white one. So I'll buy that as well. With everything purchased, I'll travel back to Elk Lake, where we'll put together our brand new setup. Of course, this setup also works perfectly on the Belaya River, especially when using standard small spinners. As you can see, these spinners sit slightly above the rod's minimum casting weight, allowing you to cast them extremely well. Especially the slightly larger 6-gram spinners perform really well, not only here at Elk Lake, but also on the Belaya River. So around 6 grams is an excellent choice. The same goes for spinnerbaits. In particular, the white spinnerbait works incredibly well here at Elk Lake. To switch over to a jig setup, we first need to change the rig type, which can be done right here at the top. Once you've reached 25% in spinning, you've unlocked both jig rigs, and these are the 2 available options. I'll start with the skirted jig because it's much easier to retrieve than the classic jig rig. And another advantage is that since we're using fluorocarbon as our main line, we don't need a leader. The fluorocarbon is already extremely transparent in the water, greatly reducing the chance of spooking fish. The exact properties of all the different line types are explained in another tutorial where I go into much more detail. You'll also find plenty of additional background information about the game's mechanics throughout the entire Golden Tutorial playlist. Now we simply equip the skirted jig, and with this combination, we're already ready to go. As you can see, the total lure weight is 7 grams, placing it right in the middle of our rod's casting range. That makes it a perfect setup for fishing here at Elk Lake. Another great advantage is that we can fish it with a very slow jigging retrieve. That's exactly what we'll do. I'll set the retrieve speed to 10, cast the lure as far as possible, and you can already see how incredibly far it flies. We even set a new record with a cast of 26 meters. When fishing a skirted jig, the important part is working the lure across the bottom using small hops. We create those little hops by first tightening the line. Then we simply turn the reel 1 full rotation, and the lure immediately makes bottom contact. After that, we make 1 more movement. And just like that, we've completed our very first jig step. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. 1 turn, 2 turns, and there's the bite immediately. Of course, that was a really nice example, but sometimes it can take a little longer. You might have to work the lure through the water 3 or 4 times before the first fish finally bites. And the great thing is that we can also catch some really big fish with this setup. The skirted jig is especially good at triggering all the different perch species here, particularly at Elk Lake. In fact, this one is even needed for one of the café orders. So let's cast straight back out and continue. Maybe we'll even catch a few more, and perhaps some larger black crappie as well. All right, let it sink again, make 1 short turn. Sometimes even half a turn on the reel is enough. Another half turn, and by now we should start feeling the line tighten. If you don't get into the jig action immediately during the first turns, so after 1 or 2 turns, then by the third turn at the latest, you should already see the jig movement. If that doesn't happen, you'll need to adjust something. For example, your retrieve speed. It's really important that you get into the jig action right from those first few turns. Now cast back out again, and while casting, also pay attention to where you're throwing your lure. Areas with steep drop-offs, where deep water meets shallow water, are generally something you want to avoid. Either fish completely in the deeper section, or stay entirely in the shallower area. Try not to jig across those edges. Whenever your lure hits the slope during the jig movement, the jig action stops. The lure makes a little jump until it reaches the top of the ledge, and only then does it continue jigging again. That interruption completely breaks the jig presentation. One huge advantage of jigging is that we can fish very effectively using extremely slow retrieve speeds. Speed 10 or speed 15 already works really well. With only a few handle turns, we're quickly back into a clean jig rhythm. On this setup, speed 15 actually works even better. One small turn, and we're immediately back into the jig action. That fish didn't hook properly. No problem. We'll simply continue. Let the lure sink again and get right back into the jig retrieve. And with this setup, it's absolutely worth fishing the deeper areas as well. If you're looking for some really intense fights against powerful fish, then definitely spend some time in the deeper water. We can really push this setup to its limits by increasing the drag all the way up to 29, allowing us to land some seriously hard fighting fish. So don't hesitate to get into your boat, move over into this area, and cast over there. Or perhaps over there instead. This whole section regularly produces incredibly strong fish. The lower area is also excellent. If you stand here and cast toward the 2.5 meter depth, you'll consistently find plenty of action there as well. Now I'll switch back over to our second setup. First, we need to select the proper jig rig, then equip our size 2 jig head, and finally attach the soft plastic craw. Once everything is equipped, you'll notice that there are no warning messages in the indicator below. Our setup isn't overloaded because we're using a 7.5 gram jig head together with a 7 gram soft plastic, giving us a total of 14.5 grams, which stays safely below our rod's maximum casting weight. That also means we can cast this setup a really long distance. In fact, we've just set another casting record, throwing it even farther than before. For this setup, I'll increase the retrieve speed a little and start with speed 20. Now make one full turn of the reel. Wait a moment for the lure to sink back down. Then make another complete turn, and we're immediately back into a stable jig rhythm. Repeat the process again, and that's how you comfortably work a classic jig rig across the bottom. This can become a little tricky whenever you're fishing in moving water. Current always makes jigging considerably more difficult. You'll need to experiment to find out whether it's easier for you to jig against the current or with the current. Fishing with the current becomes much more important later on when you reach places like the Sura River. And if you're interested in fishing there, you'll already find several videos on the channel explaining how to fish successfully for zander on the Sura River. Right there, I just crossed over a ledge and immediately lost the jig action. Now I first have to get back into the jig retrieve. Whenever you're fishing around drop-offs like this, you'll notice that after 3 or 4 turns, the jig action simply disappears. That's because you're dragging the lure over the edge of the drop-off. So simply cast out again, or even better, fish in an area without those steep transitions. You can actually see these areas quite clearly on the minimap. Cast comfortably in that direction, let the lure sink to the bottom, then start again with one complete turn of the reel. Wait until the lure settles back down, make another turn, and there it is. We're back into the jig action. You'll definitely have to experiment with your retrieve speeds. Sometimes it's not just the speed that needs adjusting, but also how many turns you make. Occasionally, one full turn isn't enough, and you'll need 2 turns or even more. It all depends on where you're standing and what the bottom composition looks like. Some areas have muddy bottoms where the jig head sinks into the mud. In those places, you'll need a little more movement to pull the lure back out, so always add some variation to your retrieve. There isn't one universal answer, like use speed 5 or always use speed 10. As anglers and as players, we have to figure out what works best under the current conditions. Which retrieve speed works? Which lure color performs best? Which lure shape do the fish want today? That's exactly what spinning is all about, constantly testing until you find what the fish are responding to. You'll also find a dedicated video on the channel covering exactly that. It explains how to get started with spinning, how to fish on the Belaya River, and how different lure colors perform under different weather conditions. With this setup, you're now fishing with one of the exact combinations that has already produced some of the largest fish ever caught at this waterway. So, be extremely careful. Always pay attention to where you're fishing. Your reel only holds 100 meters of line. That means if you're fishing somewhere out in this area, a really big fish could actually spool you completely. In those situations, you'll often have to follow the fish along the bank, tiring it out before bringing it in, or try to guide it into an area where it can't make another long run. I also have a separate advanced tutorial explaining exactly how to fight fish properly so they don't escape. As I said, you only have 100 meters of line on this reel, which isn't much. However, for most beginner waters, that's completely sufficient, including the Belaya River and Elk Lake. Especially down here in this front section, it's more than enough. If you'd rather play it a little safer and avoid hooking the absolute biggest fish right away, then simply start with the skirted jig. It's much easier to learn because maintaining the jig action is considerably simpler. You'll get into the proper retrieve much faster, and with it you can already catch a huge variety of different fish. Some truly massive fish have already been landed with this lure as well. Finally, let me show you another simple way to earn some extra silver. I already covered this in the basic tutorial, but it's definitely worth mentioning again in this series. As you know, we can complete the different café orders, and these pay significantly more silver than simply selling fish at the fish market. The great thing about the café orders at Elk Lake is that they refresh fairly quickly. As you can see, I've already completed 3 of them, even though I only logged back into the game a short while ago. The reason is that I still had yesterday's fish sitting in my keep net. They've already been there for 12 hours, and they'll remain fresh for another 12 hours. After 24 hours, however, they'll spoil inside the keep net and become completely worthless. Of course, we don't want to push it that far, but keeping them overnight and turning them in the next day, after new café orders have appeared, is definitely worthwhile. So yesterday evening, I logged out without selling my fish. This morning, I logged back into the game, immediately checked the café, and saw that I could complete a whole new set of café orders. That allows me to claim another round of rewards right away. Only after I've completed every available café order do I sell the remaining fish at the fish market. Those remaining fish are worth another 160 silver, which means I'm already back above 200 silver. At this point, I now own 3 complete pole setups, 1 complete bolognese setup, and 1 complete spinning setup. So already at level 15, I have fantastic opportunities to fish a wide variety of waters. I can earn excellent silver and XP at Elk Lake, continue float fishing on the Belaya River, and also keep progressing with spinning. The next goal is simply to save enough silver with this basic equipment until I can afford the mid-game bottom fishing setup, which I'll show in the What to Buy After Level 20 video. I'll put that on the screen here at the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, tight lines.